Welcome in, everyone, to this deep dive, and today we're going super deep on the World Economic Forum's Global Risks Report 2025.
Ooh, yeah, always a fun one.
It is always a fun one. I actually find it kind of fascinating and maybe even a little bit terrifying sometimes.
Yeah.
But, we'll get into that. But essentially what we're doing is we're tapping into the minds of experts and global leaders who are grappling with these big issues facing our world.
Yeah, I think what's really cool is that this isn't just like, some people in a room like making this up. Like they actually, they survey and talk to like, thousands of people to really get a good sense of what are the things that people are really worried about.
And it's a pretty good picture of what keeps them up at night.
Yeah.
So let's dive in.
Yeah.
One of the things that really struck me about this year's report is just this picture that it paints of division.
Oh, yeah.
And fragmentation.
Yeah.
Like we're not just talking about like theoretical concepts here. We're talking about real world conflicts. Right.
Russia and Ukraine still going on.
It's not going anywhere.
Yeah. The unrest in the Middle East, just the tensions around Taiwan.
Yeah.
Like these are real things that have very real impacts on people's lives.
And I think, what's really important to understand is that these conflicts, they don't just stay contained.
Right.
They have ripple effects. Like think about the economy.
Right.
Supply chains being disrupted.
Yeah.
Like we've all experienced this in recent years.
Absolutely.
And it just creates a lot of uncertainty for businesses, for individuals.
So it's like a domino effect almost, right?
Yeah.
Like you've got this geopolitical instability, which can then lead to, economic confrontation.
Right.
And then when you have resources becoming scarce and prices soaring, like that's a recipe for social unrest.
Oh yeah, that's when things can really start to spiral.
Right, and the report actually has this really cool visual called the interconnections map.
I love that map.
Yeah.
It's so cool. It really shows how all of these risks are kind of interwoven.
Yeah, it's like you can't just look at one risk in isolation.
Right.
Like you have to see how it connects to everything else.
Exactly. So, speaking of risks, let's dive into the top 3.
Yeah, let's do it.
For 2025. So the number one risk, according to the report, and this has actually seen a significant jump from the previous year.
Big jump.
Is state-based armed conflict.
Yeah, I think a lot of people thought that large-scale war was a thing of the past.
Right.
But
clearly not.
Clearly not. Ukraine has really shown us that it's still a very real threat.
Absolutely. And the potential for things to escalate quickly.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
It's terrifying.
So that's number 1, state-based armed conflict.
Okay.
Number 2, extreme weather events.
Yeah, not a surprise.
Not a surprise, unfortunately.
Sadly.
Given what we're seeing around the world.
And I think, what's particularly worrying is how these events exacerbate other vulnerabilities. You have a drought in a region that's already struggling with poverty.
Right.
And it can just create a whole cascade of problems.
Absolutely. Migrations, displacements, it just adds fuel to the fire.
Totally.
So, yeah, extreme weather events, definitely a major concern.
Okay, so what's number 3?
Number 3, geo-economic confrontation.
That sounds a little bit...
A little jargony.
Yeah. So break that down for us. What does that actually mean in the real world?
Okay, so essentially it's like countries using their economic power to get an advantage or exert influence.
Yeah.
Think of it as economic maneuvering, often with political undertones.
Okay, I see.
So one example that comes to mind is this EU carbon border adjustment mechanism.
Right.
So basically,
it's a mouthful.
It is a mouthful.
But essentially, they're trying to level the playing field on climate action.
Right.
By putting tariffs on imports from countries that have weaker environmental regulations.
Yeah. Okay. So it's if you're not going to play by our rules.
Right.
We're going to make it more expensive for you to sell your stuff here.
So that's how they're trying to tackle that whole carbon leakage issue.
Exactly.
Where businesses might relocate to places with lower standards to avoid regulations.
Yeah, you can't just have companies polluting wherever they want.
Right.
And then selling their products in places with higher standards.
Right. But hasn't there been some pushback on that, from other countries saying that could be seen as protectionist?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Some of the EU's trading partners are not happy about this.
Right.
They're like, hey, this is just a way for you to protect your own industries.
Right.
And, it could lead to retaliatory measures.
Right. Tit for tat.
Exactly. And that's where the confrontation part comes in.
Oh.
You start putting up trade barriers and tariffs and it can just escalate.
And then ultimately, who pays the price for that?
Well, consumers end up paying higher prices.
And having fewer choices.
It's that domino effect again.
Totally.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got state-based, armed conflict, extreme weather events, geoeconomic confrontation.
Yeah.
What's next on our list of global risks?
Okay, let's talk about misinformation and disinformation.
Ooh, that's a big one.
It's a huge one.
Especially in this age of heightened polarization and everything.
Yeah, and technology is really amplifying this risk. Think about generative AI.
Oh, yeah.
The ability to create these incredibly realistic fake videos and articles.
It's scary.
It's terrifying.
You could have a deep fake of a world leader saying something inflammatory, and it could go viral before anyone even figures out that it's fake.
And the damage is done.
The damage is done.
Right.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the report talks about this decline in trust in traditional media.
Yeah. Even with all the advancements we've made in technology, people are like, I don't know what to believe anymore.
Where do I go for reliable information?
Right.
Yeah, and that just creates this fertile ground for misinformation to spread.
Totally.
And, it can have huge consequences.
Oh, yeah.
It can influence public opinion.
Of course.
Erode social cohesion, hinder effective policy making.
It's it undermines the whole foundation of a functioning society.
Yeah. It's really scary.
Yeah.
So disinformation, definitely something to be very mindful of.
Absolutely. And it's not just, outright lies and stuff.
Right.
It's also about algorithmic bias.
Oh, yeah. That's a whole other can of worms.
Yeah. So, imagine you've got an algorithm that's deciding who gets a loan or who gets hired for a job.
Okay.
And it's inadvertently biased against certain groups of people.
Right.
That's a huge problem.
It is. And it's kind of insidious, too, because it's these algorithms are supposed to be objective.
Right. Exactly.
But if they're built on biased data,
yeah,
then they're going to perpetuate those biases.
They just amplify existing inequalities.
Right.
And it's really hard to detect sometimes.
It is. Yeah. And it's a big challenge because, we're increasingly relying on these algorithms.
In so many areas of our lives.
Right, for everything.
Healthcare, finance, education.
Criminal justice.
And it's everywhere.
So we really need to be mindful of this algorithmic bias and make sure that we're building these systems in a way that's fair and equitable.
Absolutely. We need transparency. We need accountability.
Right.
We need to make sure that these algorithms are actually serving humanity.
Right, not the other way around.
Exactly.
Okay, so moving on from the kind of digital realm to the biological realm.
Okay.
Let's talk about biotechnology.
Ooh, yeah.
Which, obviously has incredible potential for good.
Oh, yeah. Curing diseases, improving human health. It's amazing.
But it also comes with a whole set of risks.
Yeah. And the report highlights this really concerning trend, which is the increasing accessibility of bioweapons.
Oh, wow.
As biotechnology advances,
right,
the knowledge and the tools to develop these weapons could become more widely available.
Right.
And that's a scary thought.
It is. It's even these scientific breakthroughs that are supposed to benefit humanity
right,
can be twisted and used for harm.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword for sure.
Absolutely. And it's not just bioweapons.
Yeah.
The report also talks about potential negative health impacts from certain biotech advancements.
Yeah, gene editing, for example.
Right.
It holds incredible promise for treating genetic diseases.
Right.
But there's also the risk of unintended consequences.
Right.
What if a gene editing therapy accidentally introduces other mutations with unknown long-term effects?
Oh, yeah.
That's a big concern.
It is, yeah. And then you've got the whole ethical quagmire around human enhancement.
Ooh, yeah. The idea of using biotechnology to make us superhuman.
And smarter, stronger, faster.
Is that really a good idea?
Yeah, where do you draw the line?
Exactly.
And the report talks about how this could exacerbate social inequalities.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Imagine a world where only the wealthy can afford these enhancements.
It's a sci-fi movie waiting to happen.
It's like Gattaca.
Yeah.
A dystopian future where you've got the enhanced and the unenhanced.
Right. And it's not just the sci-fi thing anymore. This technology is advancing so rapidly.
It's coming.
Yeah. So we really need to have these conversations about, what are the ethical implications?
Yeah.
Where do we draw the line?
What kind of future do we want to create?
Absolutely. Okay. So from the kind of the future of humanity, let's talk about the